what you have to realize is that nobody is doing anyone favors in marriage. You are meeting two people, another person, two people coming together, wanting to live, make life together. So if you go in thinking, I'm in my late 30s, I haven't met the right person, and I can see all the red flags, but I'm going to be living with this person, what is going to happen is you are going to endure the marriage. You're not going to enjoy it.
Welcome to this week's edition of Against All Odds, and it's my privilege to introduce to you my very good friend and somebody who I've known for most of my life. She's a social worker by profession, and she's also an author. She's written a book, My Home, My Hell. Very interesting title. And it's my privilege to introduce to you Nana Ewusiwa Fynn. A few ground rules before we get going on the interview. Nana, you're not allowed to call me by the name that you know me by, because I know you've known me for so long, right? But our audience might not recognize that name. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure we'll be in for a fantastic time. Anyway. So now just tell us a little bit about yourself, because as far as I know, you've been a social worker for many years, and in the UK, and you went to university in Ghana, as did I, and you've done very well for yourself. With your daughters, you've got two lovely daughters. What has led you to this point? What made you decide to write a book in the first place?
Okay. My name is Ewusiwa Fynn, as Daniel said, and I live in London as well, and I'm a social worker by profession. I've been a social worker since 2003, and I went into social worker having done my first degree in political science and sociology. So when I came into the UK, I felt sort of it was going to be a step up to get into social work. So I got into social work, but I'm one person that sort of is very passionate about what I do. So along the years, everything I do, I make sure I do it very well and get to know the ins and outs. So writing a book more or less did not come naturally, but people thought I could always write a book. So they were not surprised when I decided to write a book. So that's about.
Excellent. So why the title? Very interesting title. My Home, My Hell. What led you to choose this very remarkable title for this book?
My Home, My Hell is a juxtaposition where my home should be a place of your own, a place where you feel free to do what you have to do, a home that belongs to you. And in that home as well, it could be someone's nightmare. It could be their living hell. It could be a place they enter with trepidation. So this book actually, initially when I was trying to write the book, I didn't have a title because domestic violence is quite a global thing. And I was thinking, I need a title, and the title needs to be catchy to make people realize the enormity of this issue, which has become quite a global thing. All over the world, actually. So I went out with a friend, Becky Pratt, and then I was telling Becky about this book and the title. And Becky was like, okay, we sat down and put heads together, and she came up with this, and it was just it was just perfect. I didn't look back. And that's why we have My Home, My Hell. Should I stay or should I go? Was sort of the subtitle, because I'm not writing a book asking people to leave abusive relationships. I'm writing a book to make people aware of what domestic violence is about. And if you are in a relationship and you choose to be in the relationship, having known what abuse is, then at least you can make the informed choice of tapping into services, which I have at the back of the book.
Okay, right. So I picked up the book pretty much because of my experience in marriage counseling for many years. And some of the points that you raised in the book, I found very, very, very relevant, and I think it's important that, we sort of go through the book, chapter by chapter, because sometimes you might find somebody who is abusing but isn't even aware that what they are doing constitutes abuse, because you basically identify certain specific things which were signs of abuse, So maybe just to kick us off, what is domestic abuse?
Domestic abuse, I mean, I wouldn't want to paraphrase, I'd rather quote from the book.
Okay.
But domestic abuse is more or less like a behavior by someone to an intimate partner with the sole intention of instilling fear or hurting them. So when I wrote the book, this was on page 2 of the book. I actually quoted domestic violence abuse because there's a difference between that. What I said was domestic abuse is also known as domestic violence, spousal abuse, battering, family violence, dating abuse, and intimate partner violence. It's a pattern of behavior which involves the abuse by one person against another in an intimate relationship, such as marriage.
Okay, so can you have domestic abuse when people are dating as well?
You do. Because there are various forms of abuse which we'll get to at some point. But people do get abused in the friendship relationship state. The time when you are getting to know each other, you pick up the red flags, the warning signs, and that's the abuse. And if you are not aware of it, you come into a relationship with your own mindset of what you want out of the relationship. So you may see the warning signs, but sort of relegated to the background because at that time, that's not what matters to you. It's just getting the partner, the person you want to be with. So when you are in that dating stage, for me, that is the most relevant time to get to know the person you want to live with.
So I believe that in marriage or in relationships, there's 3 distinct phases. I mean, the first phase is what I call the honeymoon phase, which is what you described, which is pre-commitment, where you have all the butterflies in your belly, all the excitement, all the joy, the happiness, the exotic holidays, everything that you're kind of looking forward to, and at that stage you kind of feel that, the relationship, you're probably the first person in the world to really be in love. You look at people around you and basically think that what you're feeling, nobody else has ever felt that way, such a special feeling. The second phase of marriage is what I call the discovery phase, where you begin to discover things about each other. You discover that the person you're married to has a very short fuse, very aggressive, or you find that the person is very laid back, very lethargic, not progressive, or you find that the person has, just various things. I mean, I had a couple once that I was counseling, and after marriage, the gentleman snored a lot, very heavy snore, and the lady was a very light sleeper, so you can imagine the conflict that caused. So that's the discovery phase. And the discovery phase can be anything from, after a few months of marriage or commitment, to a few years, to 10 years plus, and the third phase of marriage is what I call the acceptance phase, where you come to a point, a point of acceptance, a point where you decide your tolerance level. It's like, okay, fine, this is not perfect, we all have issues, the person I'm married is like this or like that, but I'm going to tolerate this pattern of behavior, and so just to dovetail back to what you said earlier, what does a typical abuser look like? When you say, what does an abuser look like?
You are never going to have the looks of an abuser. You would never know one. You would never know what an abuser is like. If we could tell, we wouldn't even be having this discussion,
Mm-hmm.
because an abuser could be anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It could be your neighbor, it could be your best friend, that you see all the nice things and know the nice things about the person, but that person could be extremely abusive at home. It's like people package themselves to be different at home and different out there. The kind of person you see in the public arena is not the same person at home. And what people need to realize is that the people you live with are the ones who are going to miss you more when you are not there, not the people you meet out there in the public. So if you cannot show your best self to the person you are married to, then it's a problem. And coming back to what you said, Daniel, I mean, the 3 stages. In my book, I sort of looked at it as the friendship stage would be my first stage. And for me, the friendship stage is moving from the friendship stage, and the discovery stage for me would be when we are now making ourselves exclusive. I've met Daniel, I want to be with Daniel, so I need to get to know Daniel more. In the book, I talked about various types of friendships, right up to frenemies. People you think are your friends who are actually not your friends. You know? So at that stage, if you're going to buy a book, you want to know the title, you want to know why I put the title that way, what is in the title, what is the cost, is it attractive enough, or what benefit is it going to be to me, what can I give to somebody as a blessing, is it appropriate as a gift? Why is it that when you are choosing a partner, you are not asking the questions? The first thing you want to know is, why me? Why have you chosen me? Because there must be something about me. Of all the ladies, of all the men, why do just the 2 of us want to be together? That's one general but very important question to be asking. How many children do we want in the relationship? Where do you want to reside? You know, what do you want to do? Because in marriage, we want to help each other. We want to put out our best selves. Because we are living together, 2 have become 1. We want a good life. I'm not coming into a marriage to be with you for you to enhance who I am. I have come from a background and I want to better my life. And in the process, make you a better person. So together we are going to bring the best in each other. And you're not asking the right questions. How would you know? Even the bit about the snoring. What are your likes and dislikes? I like my toilet seats down after you've used it. It's a big thing that happens in homes that leads to abuse, but people don't even talk about it. Oh, I snore a lot. I like talking. I like family to come around. I have a lot of friends. I have a weekend out with girls almost every other. These are things you tell your partner because you don't want to take anything or give any surprises in your relationship. Get to know the real person. Some people are very good. They are able to hide it and would expose it. But if you get into a courtship state and you ask yourselves the relevant questions, you will get to know the person. Because it's not just about talking, it's about the soft skills, the communication, being an attentive listener. See how he relates with or she relates to other people around you. That is going to be you a few years down the line. People can't hide who they are. Eventually, scenarios and situations would expose the real person. And even if it's not to the extent, start asking the questions. I realized he got so angry when the waiter came and served our food late. I saw how you sort of slammed the cash on the table and walked off in anger. Was that necessary? You see the response. Put it at the back of your mind. Find a nice way of addressing the issue. You need to know what you're going to be living with. When you see a tall, handsome person, an attractive, beautiful person today, few years down the line, that will not be that person. So whatever attracted you to that person, there needs to be an extraordinary something that would have kept you to be with that person. So explore each other.
So what about if you have these conversations, these difficult conversations, and the person decides to leave? You know, because some relationships are in a state where they are not properly established, you know, and to go prodding is like poking the bear, you know, and there's a reaction or whatever. Some, you know, and maybe a lady is, you know, at a certain age, she's late 30s, you know, and nobody's come along, and suddenly she finds herself in this relationship with this person, who is demonstrating subtle signs of abuse, as you described, she tries to address it, and she's a bit hesitant too, because she's not quite sure if the person, because the level of commitment might not yet be at a stage where she's comfortable to have that conversation, a very frank conversation, and she's almost like held hostage, because it's like, if I'm not careful and this guy goes, I don't know if another person will come, So, I mean, how does one rationalize that kind of a scenario?
What you have to realize is that nobody is doing anyone favors in marriage. You are meeting two people, another person, two people coming together, wanting to make life together. So if you go in thinking, I'm in my late 30s, I haven't met the right person, and I can see all the red flags, but I'm going to be living with this person, what is going to happen is you are going to endure the marriage. You're not going to enjoy it. You saw all the signs, and for the man, because he didn't question it, and he exposed it to you, a few years down the line, when you start challenging him and talking about it, he's confused, because you are aware of it. This was how I was, and you accepted it. At least let him know that it's not acceptable. And let me put it out there, anyone who decides to walk away from a relationship because the person has asked the difficult questions, then definitely that person is not the one for you. Your person is out there somewhere. Keep looking. You find the right one.
Okay. So you use a very interesting term, the one, and like I said, I've been doing marriage counseling for quite a few years, and in my own estimation, I find that many people who are married or at a certain level of, intimacy in their relationships, are not necessarily suited for each other, and sometimes it happens because, the extraneous factors. You see someone that you like, you're attracted to, you're drawn to the person, you talk a lot with the person. Something that I actually talk about in counseling, that if you talk to someone a lot, naturally you draw closer to that person, and all that. But is there really, this thing about the one? Is it a myth or is it a reality? Because, like I said, in my estimation, I think that less than 10% of married couples, are perfect for each other. For many people, the marriage gets to a stage where you've got to manage it. It's like, we know we're not suited to each other. We're not, in terms of temperament and all this. There's a disconnect, but you're already in it. Children are, and you have children. There's family, expectations and all that kind of stuff. You just can't walk away, because you're not compatible. So I'm just trying to find out if you can address this issue of the one. Is it a myth or is it a reality?
The one, for me, is a reality.
Okay.
In the sense that you have studied the person you want to be with. Marriage is a work in progress. Nobody is saying that when you marry the person, then I've conquered. As people say, oh God, men love the chase. Keep chasing. And women, keep making yourselves attractive. Don't be laid back. Don't give up. If it was what attracted you to your partner, keep it up. Make it better. Be a go-getter. Don't think because I have him, I have landed, I've reached my destination. No. Marriage is a work in progress, and as I said at the beginning, you want to make your lives better. And you have young people come out of universities. They have nothing, but they love each other. There's something called love, and they want to be with that person. They have spoken, they have explored each other in terms of wanting to know what they are going in for, and decided this is my choice. Don't give up. Marriage is not something to be endured, as I said. So be a work in progress. Keep communicating. Stop the silences, because if you keep going on with being silent, not communicating, assumptions set in. And when assumptions set in, I can believe whatever I want to believe. If you stay out late, you could be in the office working so late because you got your deadline, but I'll be thinking you're sitting somewhere in the club. So marriage is a work in progress. And the one because of all the men that you meet, why did I choose you? there must have been something about you that I want. But just make sure that you are the one your partner also wants. And understand why he wants you. Because sometimes they could want you because of your money. They could want you because of your societal standing. They could want you for whatever reason it is. So know each other and know why he or she is attracted to you. And take it from there. Marriage is a work in progress.
So can the one ever stop being the one?
Life happens. Life happens.
Because I've met people who
Yeah.
who got married, thinking that this guy is like my knight in my shining armor, or guys who got married and thought that they'll be swinging from the chandeliers, with excitement and all that, and somewhere down the line, the phase of discovery steps in, and then you realize that the one isn't actually the one. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah. As I said, life happens. And in marriage, you must have a vision for the marriage. As in your life. What is your purpose? We are still striving to know what our purpose is. So if two come together to be one, what is the marital purpose? It's not my vision alone. It's not Daniel's vision alone. It's not, it's what is the joint vision? What are we together for? So no matter what the challenges you face, you strive to work at it. But when the vision from the onset was about gaining that identity as a result of marrying into that family, you've lost it even before you started. So when you get there and the vision is changing, the goalposts have changed. They moved on. And people find themselves in marriages that is, when it becomes abusive, you did not sort of come together to be abused. So when you find yourself being battered black and blue, whatever contract I had with you is over. You've got to tell yourself, I didn't bargain for this. This was not part of the plan. So something has changed. So whatever the marriage vow was, the contract, which is a marriage, there's no contract. If you want you still love the person, there are resources out there, seek advice. That's where you go and see maybe someone of good standing in society, an elderly family member you sort of accord so much respect to, and try and resolve the differences.
So you talk a lot about marriage, but in the society in which we live now, a lot of people are in relationships, even have families and all that, without having been married. And does this conversation that we're having apply to these people as well?
It does.
Okay.
It does apply to them. It does even apply to the 16-year-old who finds themselves in a relationship, getting to know each other. It does apply. Just make sure that you know what you're going in for. And you have people who have lived together for so many years and they break up and they still think, I'm going to lose everything. No, you're not. The government recognizes it. The common law recognizes it. Because you stay together, you've acquired properties and stuff together, you have children. So it shows a level of commitment which unfortunately has failed. That doesn't mean that you have to take a walk with nothing.
Okay. So what is the difference between controlling behavior and coercive behavior?
Okay. What I would say is controlling behaviors is meant to, it's a behavior that is meant to intimidate you, to put fear in you, to get you to a place where you can be manipulated. The person controls you. So they control your movement. They want to know what time you finish work, what time you go home, what happened in between the time from work and home, why are you late? And gradually they begin to get you where they want to be. The coercive behavior is the act of how the person goes about it. So the tone, the level of action accorded to the behavior is the coercive
coercive
aspects of it.
Okay. So is domestic abuse more prevalent in certain communities and ethnic groups?
Domestic abuse is domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is between a man and a woman, partners, woman, whatever it is in these days. But It's more prevalent in some countries because some countries are more aware of it. They have the data to back it, and therefore people know about it. There are some countries that it's happening and it's very bad, but because they don't have the data, because of their way of life, their cultures, the values, people are being abused, but they are even afraid to talk about it. And the expectations in society as well. It's the woman's place to do this. But if you look at it, it was a woman's place in another century because the women were not maybe working. But it's a different world we are living in now. So certain old things that was sort of equated to women, when you look at it in current settings, it's not. So it's about understanding each other, compromising, and getting things work. Certain things are naturally a woman's remit. Certain things are naturally a man's remit. But I'm telling you for a fact, some women can do certain things men are expected to do, and vice versa. So it's not the prevalency in one particular country, because it's happening. Men and women are being abused, but it's the awareness that we raise about it, the negative awareness, the positive awareness, and the help out there that makes some countries seem as if they know what they're doing.
Okay. So let's just look at the scenario where a lady's in an abusive relationship with a man, a husband. They've got a number of children, let's just say 3 children. They have a house together. The signs of abuse are there. There's the emotional abuse, there's the financial abuse, not so much physical, but then very, very narcissistic control kind of behavior. And the lady perhaps might not necessarily be in a position of standing financially, to walk away. It's true that she's been abused. It's true that her home is a hell, and the spouse's behavior is unlikely to change. Because what I find is that abusive people hardly change. Somebody who was abusing you 5 years ago is not likely to suddenly become an angel, tomorrow. So this person's in this situation, doesn't have the financial means to walk away. Children are involved. The church might even be involved. The family might be involved, hanging there. But she knows that she's kind of losing it. She's crying. She's deeply unhappy. The children see that she's unhappy. There's no intimacy in the marriage. There's nothing there. The basic tenets of marriage, have basically evaporated. But then, in order to keeping up appearances, she feels compelled, to stay in the relationship. I mean, how can such a person walk away, or what can such a person do?
As I said as well, some places are more aware of domestic violence. There's a lot of support and help out there. Other countries are catching up because it's become a global phenomenon where, look, it's not acceptable anymore. It's even an embarrassment for this to be happening. If you sort of see the people who are doing this, but it's only because people don't really speak out. Very good men of good standing in society are abusing their wives. Pastors, church elders, they are all there in the churches preaching about love and all that, but yet they come home and abuse their wives. So when you find yourself in that relationship, there is help out there. In the book, I did say it's sort of you reach out to various people, but as Daniel said, the church is involved trying to tell you to resolve whatever issues that is going on. Family members are telling you to stay put because, look, it will work out, we'll talk to him. But as he said, you are the one living this relationship. What you fail to realize is that your children are observing. What is the impact of these children? Some children go out and they are the school ground bullies because they see their parents always fighting. Some people become victims on the playground because they take their abuse. They see what happens at home and they don't want to be pushed around, and therefore they shy away from any confrontation. So it's not, when it gets to this, where there are children involved and there's a lot to lose, you've got to plan. This is not just about you. Look at the wider picture and you move on. People start with nothing. The man has made you, or the woman has made you believe that you will not be able to stand on your own 2 feet. You will. When you make that decision to walk away from an abusive relationship, nobody needs to tell you. When you get to the breaking point, it takes nobody to guide you. You just decide, you wake up one morning, and that's what takes the men and women sometimes by surprise. I did not see this coming. They don't need to tell you. They decide, enough is enough. I'm going to move on. That does not mean it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. But when you have a vision, when you have a focus, I would rather be out there struggling on my own than to be in a house keeping up appearances where he's breaking my confidence, my mental well-being is in tatters. Even having teenage children talking to me with no respect. You can see you are breaking your own children. Nobody needs to tell you. So it's not about people guiding you. When it gets to you, leave, and you leave. And please leave even when you feel I will not be able to cope. You never know the kind of resilience you have. So you're out there trying to make ends meet.
So at what point does one say, because in the book you mentioned the fact that in the relationship stage you've got to know yourself, and in so doing you kind of know your tolerance levels, what can I tolerate, what, beyond what point, does it become critical for me to think, to consider whether I need to continue in this relationship or not. What is the threshold? Because otherwise we could be having this conversation and somebody might just say, someone with a very low threshold, might suddenly decide to bring an end to their relationship, because on a very sort of whimsical basis, whereas maybe with a bit of, thinking, a bit of analysis, children are involved, there's other people who will be impacted by my decisions, so maybe I need to raise my resilience level a little bit. So the question I'm trying to ask is, how does one distinguish between somebody who gives up easily and throws in the towel and somebody who perhaps with some guidance can raise their resilience level, to tolerate a bit of abuse? I'm not suggesting in any way, shape or form that abuse is acceptable. That's not what I'm saying. But, is there a threshold at which a person, should stay, or, I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're trying to say. And that's sort of, in the book I put it in there as, you have to know your worth. You have to know your value. Who am I as a person, as an individual? Because when you live with abuse, it would really obscure your life's potential, what you want to be. Because if I have someone always sort of marking time with me, I can't do certain things. I know of someone who wanted to further education by going to university, and the husband wouldn't have it. And it was a contentious issue. The next thing I knew this lady was pregnant. And she was, Nana, it happened. I said, no, it happened for a reason. It happened because he wants to keep you where he wants you to be. You want to do something for yourself. He wants you where you are, and you are challenging. You filled in the applications, he saw it. The next thing, you are pregnant. And you were telling me, he made you go off the pill, and look at what has happened. So you need to know what is right for you to even begin to think out and I can understand another person. If I don't know who I am, what will happen is you are going to be a follower. Whereas if you know your worth, there's going to be a limit to human endurance. There's only so much you can take. And you are going to voice it and you are going to go for it. Because as I said, it's about the two of us making life much better than when we first met. So if you find yourself always being relegated to the background, and you see a high-flying husband come and go, he is getting all the benefits of his job, he's traveling, he's doing things, he is building his life, he's happy. and you are sitting at home caring for the children and not being happy. Two heads are better than one. We can come together, we put a child with a childminder, and we both educate ourselves. So when you are in a relationship, you are together. But please don't build a vision for the other. Let it be a joint vision for the marriage. So know your worth, know your value, and do not settle for less.
Hello friends, I know you are enjoying this episode, but I'd like to ask you to do 3 things for me right now. Firstly, I'd like to subscribe to this channel. Secondly, I would like you to like this video. And thirdly, I'd like you to leave some comments in the comment section down below. Now let's get back to the episode.
Fantastic. So I think we can move on to another point. So how easy is it for victims of domestic violence to speak about their experiences?
It's very difficult. Before someone who is being abused actually speaks up or reports the incident, there would have been many occurrences that would not even have been talked about. Not even to their friends, not even to their family members. Because to start with, this is this person I met and I saw the world of, and I still do, who has suddenly ended up slapping me, kicking me about, and treating me like that. One of the signs is spitting on your partner. I mean, that's the lowest form anyone can do to another person. How am I going to tell the story to another person? I feel embarrassed. I may even talk about it and I'll get discouraged by people telling you it happened. It's not the end of the world. Oh, we've seen worse. But that's your worse. And it should be about you, not theirs. So it does happen. It depends on, it's very difficult for you to talk about it. And when you do talk about it, most people are at the stage where they are ready to go. And even that has its challenges, which is in the book, because you can reach out and then you are stalled. Whereby you're thinking, the devil I know is better than the angel I don't, because sort of you've reached out. So I just think you need to know yourself, need to know who you're living with and what you're living in, and plan your moves. Value yourself. So that when
you say plan your moves, what does that actually mean? I mean, obviously, okay, so let me give you a typical scenario. I mean, I have a couple that I'm dealing with where there's domestic abuse, clear domestic abuse, and the lady is thinking of making a break. So she's kind of pursuing the qualification that she was prevented from pursuing years back through the many pregnancies and all the things that you described. But she's kind of waiting till she's finished her course, she's gotten a job, before she kind of makes that move. Is that what you mean by plan your exit?
Yes, you need to plan your exit, and you need to be strategic, because no one should take abuse, and I'm not accepting abuse in any shape or form. But sometimes we need to be smarter, because you've been living with that abuse. You have decided, I'm going to do this course. You were prevented from doing this course. So obviously the abuse is around the course you are doing, because that person sees the potential. That person sees what you can become with what you are doing. So they are trying to prevent you. So you have borne it for that long. So long as it is not impacting on your well-being, it is not a physical assault, even emotional assault, sort of assault that is impacting on your mental well-being, I would ask you to be strategic in your exit. Because I said in the book, marriage at that time is the only time when you are sleeping with the enemy. So sleep with one eye open, be smart, be smart. Because what you don't want, and we've had many women leave their marriages in a state of anger, in a state of sort of in haste, and leave their children with their partners because they are not in a position to do that. And it's their greatest regret. Some are able to go through the legal system and get their trial for their children, but some too just fight a losing battle and end up having contact. So you need to plan. It depends on, you've got baggage. How am I going to work this baggage so that I'm not the one who loses out? Because it's going to be a loss. and the loss is going to come up with a lot of emotions. So you need to plan. That's why in marriage you don't just walk into a relationship. You don't just walk into a marriage. You should be very strategic. You should be mindful of what you are going in for, and at the same time when you have to exit well.
So you talk about, can you just give us some examples of abuse? Because one of the things that you talk about in the book is financial abuse, and neglect. Can you just give us a few examples? Because I suspect that some of the perpetrators might not even be aware that what they're doing constitutes abuse. Somebody who disrespects his wife, like couples where, I'm told that the husband is name calling the wife, you're too fat, you're too this, since you had children, you just let yourself go. The wife's confidence has just plunged. The person says really negative things, look at you, you look like a sack, all sorts of horrible things.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of behavior that would constitute abuse?
Okay, so there are various types of abuse, which is in the book. You have physical abuse, you have sexual abuse, you have cyber abuse, which is the technological abuse, you have financial abuse, and then I added neglect. You have emotional abuse. All these are behaviors that happens in the relationship that is with the intent to sort of intimidate you, to put fear into you. So you have physical abuse, pulling your hair, slapping you, hitting you, spitting, even death, killing you. Some of them is not with intent. They pushed you and then you fell down, you hit your head against the wall and you died. That was not the intention, but my dear, you are dead. You stay in the relationship, is beginning to impact on your emotional well-being. You are being body shamed, name calling, gaslighting, stonewalling, whereby they go silent and are expecting you to make the decisions, even though they know what they want. They don't want to say it to you, they want to hear it. You are the one who made the decision. Even though I've done everything to make you get to that decision you've reached. At the end of the day, I can stand up and say, you walked out in the relationship, I did nothing. But he's done everything, or she's done everything to get you to make that decision. So something like financial abuse. You get into a relationship and, for instance, you decide to open a joint bank account, which I don't advocate for anyway. But then you've opened a joint bank account, and the sole purpose of this account is to pay the bills in the home. So at the end of every month, we both put some amount of money into the coffers, predominantly to pay the bills. We know the bills that are coming in. Most bills are maybe set up by direct debit, so you have an inkling of what the bills would be. So we've got it covered. And then you both have access to the account, but because you set it by direct debit, it's going to sort of come out. You don't need to do much, so long as the money is in. Then this man makes large, or woman makes large withdrawals out of the account. And when you question him or her, she gets very evasive, very upset, intimidated. You can't even talk about it. That's financial abuse. Because at the end of the day, we have to find more money into that bank to pay the bills. It gets very frustrating. And when you find yourself in a very frustrated way, you lash out. And the sad thing is that you may not even lash out at your partner, because he's intimidated you to such an extent that you lash out on your children, people closer to you, sometimes even your workmates. You take it out on them. And when you look back, it's for no reason.
What about a husband who says to the wife, I need some money for this, or that, and I'll pay you back, and they never pay you back, and it's like a pattern of behavior where they're constantly getting your money and not paying back, and they're not contributing to the house bills or anything like that. The lady is basically having to do, 90%, or she's basically having to carry 90% of the financial load, because this man or this partner is not making any efforts, to pull his weight. Is that financial abuse?
That's financial abuse, because when the person asks you money for the first time, this is my husband, he's told me about his vision, he needs money for it, he hasn't got the money, but it's going to be good for both of us. and therefore I give him the money. Payback time, he's not giving me the money. Would you do it a second time? Yes, maybe you would. But subsequently, if you keep doing it, then you are aiding the abuse. Put it this way, you are allowing it. And I know they put so much stress on the person. In the book, I had a friend, a personal friend, that the husband, they had just bought their place, and this man asked for 15,000 of the mortgage. And she was adamant that that money should not come out. The man went to her family, spoke to some of her friends, obviously knew not to come and talk to me, but yes, spoke to people, and he ended up taking the money. He never paid.
Wow.
Never paid. And it's a contentious issue to date. But he never paid the money. And the money was definitely not used for the home. So financial abuse is a serious thing. Look, your money is yours. His money is his. When we've come together, we have a marital agenda. We have a vision. Let's sit down. You've got to work the maths and get it right. But financial abuse is also when you are always the one doing it. And then they gaslight you. They'll be telling you, you are the one buying the food, but they'll tell you, we buy the food. Because maybe he went into Costco or something and did some kind of bulk buying once in the month, and he's provided food forever in the home. So there's a lot of abuse, even with neglect. I coined neglect in this book to be a form of abuse. Neglect is usually associated with parental neglect, neglecting children. But among the spouses and you and your spouse, there is a level of neglect because we signed up to be partners for a specific reason. And you are not living up to your side of the bargain. You are neglecting me because I didn't sign up for that. We have children. Children need to go to school. After school club, breakfast club, child-minded. Is it down to the woman? Let's talk about it. It shouldn't be down to me. The children are ours. It's not my children, it's our children. So when we get that demarcation right, we tend to do things with two in mind other than one in mind. Emotional abuse, just to hit on emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is something that you cannot quantify. You don't see it, but it's a feeling. And you know, Maya Angelou once said, you don't remember what people say to you sometimes, but you would always remember how people make you feel. And that's how I always sort of try to explain emotional abuse. You live with how you're feeling all the time, down, crying, upset. For how long can you endure that? You've got to get to the bottom of it. Seeking help or talking about it.
Okay. So why do victims of domestic abuse feel like they have to cover up for the perpetrator?
There are various reasons. They love them, peer pressure, family pressure, societal status of wanting to be married, keeping up appearances, church elders, your religion. Nobody may marry me if I leave, and I'll never get anyone to love me the way the person loved me. In your eyes, sometimes the person, your partner also making you think that when you leave or when you report me, nobody will believe you. I work in an area where I work with people who sort of are subject to immigration control. There was one lady that walked up to us because she couldn't take it anymore. And when she came and we looked on the system, she had received her status 2 years before. But the husband always made her think that we're still waiting for the papers because he knew that if she knew that I'm okay to legally work in this country, I'll be out. I'll be able to access benefits and the likes of it. So, wouldn't tell her.
Interesting. Are there instances where women abuse men?
Oh yes. I talked about myths in the book. Women do abuse men, and there was the only gentleman who was able to speak to me. I approached people I knew that had gone through abuse, but obviously we didn't want to talk about it. But this man was prepared to talk about it. He faced a lot of challenges, but then came up because it had reached the stage where hot water was the cup of tea in the cup was poured on him.
Wow.
And he had to seek medical treatment. And this was witnessed by the little daughter. And for him, that was his breaking point.
I think there was an incident recently on the news where a lady, a very senior executive of, I don't know which was the, was on the news, and
Was it the killing?
no, this lady who abused her husband, she would defecate and make the husband clean up, and all that. She was put in jail a few weeks ago.
It took a lot for that man to come out.
It did.
My first experience as a social worker was going into a family home where the man had made a self-referral. I just can't forgive myself for that when I look back. But it was a matter of, I'm looking at the size of the woman and looking at the size of the man and thinking, okay. And, I was that quite flippant about the whole thing. But with what I know now, I missed the opportunity to have salvaged that marriage or have saved that man.
Do some victims of domestic abuse bring this on themselves, by being confrontational or being intransigent, because in certain cultures, maybe partners are supposed to relate in a certain way, and all that. But if you're married to a woman who, probably maybe grew up in this, a very sort of liberated woman, if I can use that word, very sort of a woke kind of person who's aware of her rights and all those kind of issues, and she's not the kind of person that you can talk down to. She's not the kind of person who will, take a certain level of, vitriol and attack and a certain level of nonsense, right?
No nonsense.
Would you say that such a person brings maybe the negative aspects of the spouse by being assertive? Maybe that's the word I should use, assertive. And maybe slightly, confrontational sometimes?
No. I mean, no one has the right to abuse anyone. It's not acceptable. I mean, we are trying to advocate for children to not even be hit because of the repercussions it has on that child's, life growing up. So why is it that we've come together to be co-equals, no matter the age gap, no matter your social standing, we are together. You have no right. If I'm passionate about something, if I'm having a go at you for something that you haven't done, you've got to live up to and sort of stand up to what you've done, rather than intimidate me by lashing out. And I always say, when you lash out, you are the weaker partner, because that's the only way to keep the other party quiet. So people have conversations and people have arguments in marriage, healthy arguments. There's no need for you to lash out at the person. You can talk about it, dialogue. Don't talk at each other, because when you talk about each other, you are going to be personal, and in the process of being personal, you're going to hurt each other, and the hurt will live with the person for so long. They can't forgive you. People have arguments in relationship over nothing, but when it becomes personal, it escalates, and then it becomes something, and sometimes they don't even know how it started. We don't even know why we are here, but it's because of something very trivial, which you didn't even recognize at the time.
Good. The final question for today is, if an abused partner decides to leave, is it wise to inform the abuser of the decision, or should they leave quietly in the middle of the night?
That's a bit graphic. You don't need to leave in the middle of the night, but it's important to move in silence. And when I say move in silence, you know the person you are married to. You know what you have gone through. And you know what you can take, and you know the potential of your husband or your wife. Telling, and I have that all the time, they are living together in the same house, and the threats, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to leave you. Oh, by the time you come, I'm gone. They come back and you are here, empty threats. Then, I'm going to leave you, and this predator, let me use the word loosely, is thinking, no you can't, because you're mine. Okay. I own you, I married you, I paid your bride price. It cost me so much. I'm not going to lose this. Because in America, for instance, the highest earner in the marriage is the one who pays the alimony, is the one who pays the, what do you call it? Is it alimony? No alimony, it's... If the person has to move on,
Yeah.
you are the one who's going to give.
Oh, okay. Understood.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're the one who's going to give your partner whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
So the partner who doesn't earn much would goad you into all sorts of scenarios, wanting to provoke you, so that when they leave, you end up looking after them.
Okay.
And they go and get other partners, and then it ends up, that's where you have some of the killings and all that. But then it's very important to move in silence. You don't need to talk. Sometimes you need to know the kind of relationship you've had. You've reached out to family members, you've reached out to church elders, you've reached out to men of good standing in communities, you've reached out to charities wanting that help, and it didn't help. I know of a lady who reached out and ended up in a refuge, but she had a 5-year-old and had a 13-year-old. The 13-year-old just did not fit in the refuge. The woman looked at the scenario and went back home. So it's not like she didn't want to move, she tried, but has come back. The abuse would be worse. Because now you've proven, just as the man told you or the woman told you, there's nobody out there to support you. So this woman either would come back to be submissive or would try to move on. But plan your exit. Strange bedfellows, plan your exit. Take your passport. Take your identity, your things that would identify who you are. Keep it in a safe place in the house. Keep it in a bag. Keep it with a neighbor. Keep it with a family member that you know would not go shouting at their partner, what is going on? Your partner has brought me the passport. What is going on in the home? No, you don't need that. When you realize that you have somebody like that, you don't even. I actually wrote in the book, even the professionals you work with, it gets to a point where you don't even have to tell us everything. Because you've reached your breaking point and you want to go. Plan your exit. Put things in place. Have your mobile phone charger around you. Keep your phone on charge. And move. I helped a lady move out. This was years ago. Didn't even have an idea. I put a book together. But then the husband was so abusive. And she found a piece of her hair in an envelope. And this was an African person. I don't want to mention the country because we would know. But it was a matter of when she saw you've combed your hair, hair in the comb, and you find it in an envelope with your name on, in his suitcase.
Wow.
She comes telling me, and I'm like, this is not good. This abuse has been going on for so long. So she said, I'm ready to move out. I helped her. She had a property somewhere else. We cleaned the place up, and I said, leave everything as it is in the home. She had boxes in her car. It didn't come out. She cleaned the house from top to toe, and the man was a bit suspicious, but didn't know what was going on. I said, leave everything. We had labeled the boxes. She packed out of her home in 4 hours. When the man came back from work, she had left. He told the whole world all the negative stories you can think of, but at the end of the day, she had her sanity.
So what about if you move out and the perpetrator tracks you down to your new place?
It happens all the time. When you move, they try and find out where the children are registered in schools, where you've registered with a GP. They are following family members because they know you could be somewhere. They follow you from the shops because they know you are going home with your shopping bags. They will track you. Some of them will track you because they feel they own you. You need to get to the police station at this point. If you are being stalked, it's a very deadly. And see, don't take threats, being stalked. Don't take it for granted at all. Your life is at stake. Get out early whilst you can, so it doesn't become too acrimonious to the extent where you are going to be stalked.
Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, this is where we'll leave it. Is there any film that maybe they can watch about how to escape, maybe like a James Bond movie or,
I wish.
or one of these?
Maybe we can get one.
We can
find
so
one.
the next episode will tell you of a film, a domestic abuse film where the person escaped, and maybe you can watch it and help to plan your own escape. But thank you very much, Nana Ewusiwa, for your time and for this insight that you've shared with our audience. And we're not saying that you should leave your marriage, but what we're saying is that learn to identify abusive behavior and coercive behavior And when it gets to a threshold that your life is at risk or it's impossible for you to stay, there is help. There's help out there. You don't have to accept, the status quo. There's something that you can do about it. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.